like to give the floor to Andrea Jerina, who I see here in front of me and who is ready to give you the welcome to this meeting. I think many of you know Andrea already. She is the national coordinator of not less than 3 macro-regional strategies and has been working for a very long time with macro-regional issues within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Slovenia. So please, over to you, Andrea.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you, dear colleagues. I'm extremely pleased that I can meet you actually on the 5th Mediterranean Coast and European Macro-Regional Strategies Week, which is starting actually today, and it will last till 25th of September. We call it week, but within these 5 years, so many events, so many initiatives have actually gathered under our umbrella of macro-regional cooperation. So we simply cannot accommodate all the events within 1 week. So actually it's 2-week event. Unfortunately, we are not able to meet and greet you all in Izola, a tiny, sunny city in Slovenian coast. Some of you know from previous years, but nevertheless, we do hope that in these extraordinary circumstances, we will anyway be able to exchange all our views, ideas on the most pending and most crucial topics that we, with the macro-regional strategies, can actually contribute. Well, this year, Mediterranean Coast and Macro-Regional Strategies Week is special because of 2 reasons. The first one I already mentioned. We are working in extraordinary circumstances due to the COVID-19 and all related issues. And the second actually is that this year Slovenia is pro tempore chair of the Adriatic-Ionian strategy. So we are trying to mark our Mediterranean Coast and Macro-Regional Strategies Week as one of the milestones of the Slovenian presidency. And the Slovenian presidency of the EUSAIR actually is focused on strong, resilient, green and smart European Union, and of course the macro-regional strategies and macro-regions. In addition to this very important event, which we are taking part right now and addressing the very affected area of the tourism, we will in addition have 3 workshops that are touching the most pending and crucial themes right now. The first one actually addressing the need that we within the European Union increase our resilience in the food production. So if we want to produce more food, we need to assure the biodiversity. That's why we need to start on a systematic manner to design, to put on our plans also the green infrastructure. This is a theme that is with us already for the 5th year. It's coordinated under the Alpine strategy, but it is more than obvious now that we need to start working in this relation too. The second one will be dealing with the macro-regional contribution to the European Green Deal. This is the theme that we all have to touch. And of course, macro-regions with our multi-level governance structure, we are the one who should and could contribute a lot. And the last one, the recovery of the European Union and our regions can only be green and smart. So for the first time, we will have the attempt to bring all those responsible for smart specialization in our region around the same table and exchange our views on that part. With the COVID-19, actually, it has been shown in a most brutal manner what really happens if we close behind regional and national borders instead of working together for the same purpose. Only when we joined our forces, our knowledge, our skills, and also the funds, it was better for all of us. But we are not there yet. The situation is deteriorating in a number of states, including Slovenia. So this is also one of the reasons why we are not able to host you in Slovenian coast, but also that what we are going to discuss today is the most crucial and most important topic where we all together and only together can contribute to the results. So without further ado, I will pass back my word and wish you all that we have a successful meeting, but not only successful meeting, but also the outcomes of the future events. And before I just pass the word, as you know, with every presidency, it is concluded by the ministerial meeting during the annual forum. We don't know what will be the situation in May next year, but we would like to encourage everyone participating in any event to try to bring at the end of the event a kind of the conclusions, kind of the messages that we would like to pass to our political leaders in order that whatever we propose, whatever agrees, gets political support in order that we are able to implement what is recommended. So please bear in mind, and in the end, I would like to ask you, what are the main messages you would like to convey to the political level? Thank you very much, and I pass back the word. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andrea, for these very encouraging words. And also, thank you very much for giving us the honor to start this event with this workshop. We are very proud of that, of course. And I am myself very sorry that I am not able to be in Isola. I had been to Isola, I know the place. Today you will have to cope with me here from Brussels, from our bedroom, basically, with a view you can see behind me. But that is the result of COVID. We are all trying to go forward and do the best of the situation. And that's why we are here together now. First of all, good morning to all of you. I see that you are joining here all the time. Good morning to all of you. I hope that you have had a nice and refreshing summer break despite these particular very unusual challenges that we have been facing during this year. And you know that we are all put under strain. You also know that from the side of the Commission, we have launched a package of incentives to respond to the economic, social, and well-being consequences of the pandemic. And that is why on the 27th of May this year, that the Commission launched the most comprehensive and ambitious recovery plan that the European Union actually has ever seen in order to ensure the recovery of a sustainable, inclusive and fair Europe. And that is why we have proposed a new recovery instrument, Next Generation EU, which together with the new budget for the Commission for the forthcoming period, what we call the multi-annual framework, will bring a lot, really a lot of money. It's almost 2 trillion euros. It's really a lot of money. Now the question is, and the challenge is obviously to make the best use out of this money. Now we are here to discuss tourism today, and tourism is a very important, very significant topic for European territorial cooperation on the cohesion policy. Looking at the EU tourism industry, although it was one of the first sectors to rebound after the last financial crisis, it is now one of the first sectors to be affected by the pandemic and by the COVID crisis. Before the crisis, tourism contributed to 10% of EU GDP and 12% of the employment. And the great impact that the crisis had on tourism industry and the whole tourism ecosystem is something that we are currently assessing within the Commission. And my colleague, Mrs. Ramone Genspigilite from DG GROW, will explain more how the Commission acts in order to face this unprecedented crisis in a few minutes. If we look at the budget for European territorial cooperation, almost 12% of it was allocated to sustainable tourism projects in the current programming period. And a lot of people have been involved in this. We saw that more than 1,000 projects have been carried out with almost 5,000 different organizations and stakeholders involved. So it really shows the bottom-up character of European territorial integration through Interreg programs. And my colleague Joanna Moliu from DG Regio will later present how tourism can benefit from ERDF investments in the upcoming programming period, and she will particularly focus on policy objective 1, Smarter Europe. However, it's not only about the programs, the Interreg programs itself. We need also to look at it in a broader context, and then I mean the macro-regional context. You are all familiar with the macro-regional strategies. You know that these serve as a structured framework for cooperation, and they are a way to support and acknowledge the fact that sustainable and responsible tourism is a major driver for economic development in Europe. And in a while, we will learn more from the macro-regional strategies, and particularly for those people who are in charge of cooperation for supporting sustainable tourism within these strategies. And that is also why I am very pleased to have today among us in the panel representatives from the strategies. We have Andrea Krabbe, who is the priority area coordinator for tourism in the Baltic Sea strategy. We will also have with us from Romania, Mr. Bailestanu, who is working with tourism in the Romanian administration. We have Blanca Belosevic, who is coordinator of the thematic steering group for sustainable tourism within the European strategy of Adriatic and Ionian region. And last but certainly not the least, we will have Mr. François Boissac, who is the director of tourism in the French region of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, and who will give their perspective on this issue. If we now look ahead to the upcoming programming period, 2021 to 2027, there are a few points that I would like to stress as a start of today's discussion. I think when we look at the impact of the pandemic on the tourism sector, we need to take a more kind of holistic perspective. We need to consider this in the broader systemic impact affecting the whole tourism ecosystem and all the various globalized and interconnected value chains that are here working, meaning that we have to look at a whole range of actors. It comprises offline and online information services, travel agents, tour operators, accommodation suppliers, destination managing organizers, visitors attraction, and transport services. And we also have to remember that all these, or basically almost all those activities, they are small business. It's the SME sector that is engaged in this. Now, looking at the transnational ETC programs and the macro-regional strategies, the horizontal measures and collective processes here are very important, and the aim should be to try to activate existing networks, platforms, and structures for peer-to-peer exchange, best practice, and lessons learned. And we are going to hear more about this in a while. That is why we have also engaged in DG REGIO a high-level expert on tourism matters, Mr. George Strakopoulos of Tourism Genesis, to prepare an impact assessment analysis of the pandemic for the tourism industry. And this analysis includes recommendations for all macro-regional strategies for joint actions to address the challenges of the pandemic. And today we are looking very much forward to listen from and hear more from Mr. Strakopoulos about the findings and conclusions of this analysis that he has carried out. Now, finally, a couple of practical things. First of all, this workshop is divided into 2 parts, and each is followed by a questions and answer session. So could you please wait and collect your questions to these sessions? There will be 1 question and answer session after each part, so 2 in other words of them. Then please always mute your microphones when you are not talking, because the system is very sensitive and we could otherwise hear you. The workshop will be recorded and shared with you afterwards. If you have any issues with your connection or speed, one way to try to sort this out and improve the situation could be to turn off your video. To participate in the question and answer session, please write down your question in the chat so that there is a clear order of who comes next in the discussion. And the chat is activated by clicking on the icon with the speech bubble in the toolbar in the right upper corner of your meeting window. Then also we are supposed to end this workshop at 1:30 at 13:30. And for those who do not happen to know it, I come from a country where we cannot tend to cut off people who do not keep themselves to the time that they are allocated in the agenda. So please be aware that I may interrupt lengthy speakers, and that should also mean that I should very soon myself stop to speak now. There is also a final announcement I wanted to make, and that is that I would like to say that this workshop is just the first step in our initiative on tourism recovery through cooperation. The next step will follow at the European Week of Regions and Cities in October, that's in a month, where we also are organizing a workshop, a follow-up workshop, and I hope to see as many of you as possible at that workshop. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this completes what I wanted to say as an introduction. And now I would like to give the floor to Mrs. Ramona Genspigelite from DG GROW. Ramona, are you available?
Yes, good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me and you can see me. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you very much for this invitation and congratulations for this workshop. It's very timely. We're all aware, even those who are not working with tourism, that this sector is in due to the COVID crisis, to relaunch it towards the recovery. long-term recovery. So I wanted to talk about, I will share my presentation now. Tourism ecosystem as such, briefly, why we designed it like that, briefly about the crisis, some figures, giving some figures of impact, about the road towards recovery, what we have planned. I will try to share now. Right. In ecosystems. Already in the communication on new industrial strategy for Europe, the Commission has identified 14 ecosystems, which basically covers 70% of the EU economy and roughly 90% of the business economy in terms of shared value added. And as you can see, tourism is one of these 14 ecosystems, which gives a picture of how important tourism is seen at the institutions. Not just because of the crisis, but also before, due to its importance to the economy, to the job creation, to the regional cooperation. Actually, why we have this ecosystem lens? It highlights the interdependence among the member states and across all the players in different value chains. It helps to identify the bottlenecks, the challenges in the single market that we have on time. It is a real-time concept, a dynamic concept, which helps us to identify problems and act at the moment. We have seen that it has helped us to mobilize during the COVID crisis. Now, tourism ecosystem, as Johan briefly mentioned, is indeed interconnected and globalized value chain of all modes: passenger transport, tourism and travel operators, accommodation providers, hospitality and leisure. It does connect all offline and online, public and private information and service providers. It covers from very small family-based enterprises to big multinational corporations. Over 90% of business enterprises, however, in Europe are SMEs, which is very important starting base for our policy. There is an upstream and downstream interaction with the other economic sectors and ecosystems in mobility, in construction, cultural and creative industries, agri-food, digital, social economy, etc. Now, before the crisis, we had identified together with the member states and stakeholders, industry, the key challenges, key shared challenges that we were addressing, which are actually confirmed also now during the crisis. I will talk about it in a minute. It brings us to the roadmap for recovery, where we want to go. So first of all, sustainability is a major issue. We want to see a balanced growth. Digital transformation and the new business models has been a challenge, and radically disrupting the tourism value chain, but also offering the opportunities for the industry where we have to take the chances. Workforce is lacking the skills that are required in the current situation, so we have to upgrade the skills and make some changes there. And of course, keeping up with the global market competition. Although EU is a leading destination with 40% of tourism arrivals and 30% of receipts, still the share is expected to shrink because we have a strong competition from fast-growing emerging markets such as Asia Pacific, as well as USA as a main market. Now, I wanted to share this graph with you. Tourism is indeed, as Johan mentioned already, a key contributor to economic and social fabric in Europe, with nearly 10% of EU GDP contribution and 12% contribution to European employment, which represents roughly 23 million of jobs, and out of which almost half, 43%, are under 35 years of young people and seasonal workers. Now, figures for member states, for instance, just to give an idea, contribution to national GDP in 12 member states range from 10 to 25%, which is quite significant. So if we have, for instance, Croatia 25%, Cyprus 22%, Greece 21%, Portugal 19%, Austria, Estonia, and Spain 15%, Bulgaria, Italy, Slovenia 12%, Malta 11%, and France 10%, to give an example. And 4 out of these member states are among 10 top worldwide destinations: France, Italy, Spain, and Germany. Many call tourism visitors economy. That is again to illustrate what we call in the Commission jargon, in EU jargon, the tourism ecosystem. Again, includes, as you can see, all the supply and demand networks, businesses of different nature, public authorities at all levels. What is not visible here, it should be added actually, is the role of data. Data is very important in this picture. And now it is important to take into account these interconnections between the segments, and we've seen already in the COVID crisis that these interconnections hurt the damage across different sectors, and it made us early alert impacts of tourism and other sectors. So in a way, again, to come back to my first introductory words, the industrial ecosystem for tourism serves for us as a diagnostic tool to develop policy options and come across the challenges that we might face. Now, COVID crisis. We all know that tourism was and is still one of the most affected sectors hit by this crisis. In a way, because of course of closed borders to protect health and safety of the citizens, and of course also because tourism is a service-based economy, and it's largely driven by behavior of the consumers. According to the June date for global tourism, so depending actually, of course, on the duration of the crisis, which is unknown, scenarios indicate that a potential shock could range between 60 and 80% decline in the international tourism economy if we compare it to last year. And this translates into big losses, over 1,000 billion of euros for the global travel industry. In Europe, tourism ecosystem urgently needs to go back to work. We have more than 6 million jobs directly saved for tourism, mostly among SMEs and family-run businesses that are working in accommodation, restaurants, passenger transport, travel agencies, tour operators, online and offline. Tourism and travel businesses of all sizes are faced with liquidity. Yes, is there? Yes, is there? Okay. According to the Eurostat data published. Hold on. There's a problem if I cannot share. Can you hear me still? I cannot continue. There it is. I wanted to share this data by latest we have that was published on the 4th of September. In June 2020, all the sectors within the EU services decreased quite significantly, of course, due to COVID crisis. However, if we take, for instance, the total service sector in the EU, this estimation has decreased by 16.4% during the period. Then tourism service sector fell by 75%, quite an important indication. As an example, across the sectors of the ecosystem, for instance, travel agencies and tour operators fell mostly by even more than 80%, followed by air transport 73, 74%, accommodation over 66%, and restaurants 38.4%. If we compare the data with the June of the last year, the figures are really dramatic. The restaurant sector had the largest recovery, followed by accommodation sector. Much discussed of, it had only slight recovery, of course, because of the restriction of the fear factor of the consumers. According to Eurocontrol, if we compare to 2019, Europe has lost 4 million flights, which is 57%, and 60% of their passengers. And for winter, the situation doesn't look much better. Intra-Europe flow is at less than 50%, while all other flows, international flows, less than 71%. Now, the key message that we saw is, of course, the negative turnover in booking continues, impacting revenues and jobs in all segments and in all member states. Now, a steep fall in demand for international trips compared to the domestic trips, and naturally the uncertainty for medium to long-term recovery plays an important impact here. What EU or the Commission in this respect has done. So from the very first signs of the crisis, we have tried to put together with the member states, of course, to launch tools to support the lifeline, if you wish, the enterprises and the jobs of all the sectors that are suffering, including tourism. So the state aid measures have been significantly used. We have seen over 200 state aid measures schemes approved by the Commission for tourism, not only exclusively, but tourism is included, is benefiting from these schemes. The CRI instrument, the Coronavirus Response Investment Initiative, was tabled there to use the unspent structural funds money, among other, to support the liquidity of the small and medium enterprises. There was also the SURE instrument that was facilitating to protect the jobs. The Globalization Adjustment Fund was also on the table. And of course, as mentioned, the biggest and the most, let's say, revolutionary gesture of solidarity has been the recovery plan launched at the EU. And now it is in the hands of the member states to prepare national recovery plans and include, hopefully, tourism where it is significant in those plans, so we can see the actual relaunching of the ecosystem. The Commission also presented specifically for tourism and transport a communication package in May, which was a reaction to relaunch the tourism gradually as the member states were exiting from the confinement period, and to boost, let's say, reassurance of the European citizens and to allow them to plan the summer holidays that were approaching. So in May, we were trying to save at least as much as we can the summer season, which is very important in European tourism, as you know, by giving the confidence to citizens, and also by introducing the guidelines, how to open gradually borders, how to introduce safety measures in all the means of transport and in the hospitality sector. So this communication covered 4 different documents: how to restore free movement and opening internal borders, how to restore transport and connectivity, tourism services, hospitality guidelines for hospitality establishments, and a recommendation on vouchers, how to give an alternative to the reimbursements, so to give the guarantee also to the consumers and serve at the same time the businesses. Now we are heading towards a sustainable recovery. We have to think together with all the stakeholders and the member states, the regions, what is the best path to recover tourism in the medium term, but also in the long term, to build the European agenda for 2050. So first of all, we believe that we have to build confidence among the citizens, stimulate demand so that it can pick up as quick as possible, and of course conditioned by by the situation and all the uncertainty we have of this crisis. We don't know how it will evolve. And we have to restart the tourism ecosystem together. Now, building we need a new normality. We need to build, to coordinate the approach to travel. Important point. We have been cooperating through the coordination instrument. The Commission has a coordination in PCR at the general level, not just for the tourism, of course. But this has been a very important coordination instrument across. We need to ensure easy access to reliable information. One of the examples that the Commission has done was to launch a web application, Reopen EU, which has been, well, we've seen a great success with a lot of visitors and has been giving actually a real-time information to the travelers, boosting the confidence and providing clarity. But here again, we depend a lot on the timely and correct information input by the member states. We will need to continue working with the sanitary protocols for tourism businesses. We have already started before the summer promotion campaigns. For example, Euronews has broadcasted our campaign, We Are the Europe. There are many other campaigns that we're boosting the image of local travel, European travel, different let's say incentives for the consumer to continue traveling even in these conditions. We need to restart the tourism ecosystem by protecting businesses and jobs. It is important to have them viable as much as possible, otherwise we cannot relaunch anything. We need to have this the recovery along the European strategy for growth, along the long-term goals that we have established in this mandate. So to build the economic resilience, actually, we will need to go through green transition, build resilient workforce, digital transition, and workforce. The green transition, of course, means was quite a front topic of discussion before the crisis. We have to see now how the destinations that were in difficulty, how they will relaunch tourism after the crisis. Many of them are already discussing that taking this moment to restart in the right path without falling into the same trap, if you want, of unbalanced tourism. We will need to shift to a growth model that is based on volume, on value over the volume. We have been focusing for many years on the number of arrivals. We have to change this perspective, taking into quality aspect into account. We need to update tourism infrastructure, energy performance, waste management, and all the other circular tourism services related. We need to reinforce connectivity and make mobility more sustainable, be it rail, waters. We need to focus on carbon neutral goals that lead to the Green Deal objectives at the EU. We need to boost digital transition, focusing on, among other, the digitalization level of the industry. Access to data is very important, local data hubs for tourism, and capacity building of the workforce. And here the Pact of Skills, the initiative at the EU level, will focus on the green, digital, social skills, linked also, of course, with the crisis, health crisis, and crisis management and preparedness. Here we have to help the people working in the tourism industry to boost their skills and their capabilities, how to adjust. And here I would like to close with an invitation to attend and to apply, if you can, to the European Tourism Convention, which will be held on the 12th of October. It will be a fully virtual event with parallel thematic workshops in the morning. and we have sent a call for expression to as many stakeholders as we could gather to participate in this morning workshops, which will be the participants will be selected. There is a capping of participation for the workshops, and in the afternoon we will hold a plenary discussion. This will be upon invitation. Also, Commissioner will be there. Naturally, this is his initiative to discuss the roadmap towards sustainable, innovative, and resilient tourism in the future with all the stakeholders. And to have actually our hope that as an outcome, as a first step, we will have a better picture of what could be our strategic framework for the future of tourism based on agreed priorities and concrete actions in the years to come. Well, I hope I have covered more or less the picture of where we stand with the tourism policy at the Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ramona. I know that some of you had problems to hear Ramona, but I just wanted to say that the slides that she provided, I think most of you could read and will certainly be distributed to all of you. But this is a bit the situation we are in when we do these seminars online. Sometimes the connection is not always perfect, but that's why I also would like to tell you that please, those who do not speak, please switch off your camera. Like that, we try to save a bit of bandwidth in this. But thanks again very much, Ramona, for this intervention. And now we go directly to the next speaker, which is Joanna Moliu, who is policy officer at the European Commission, and where she works a lot and has been a lot engaged in issues related to tourism, culture, and also SME initiatives. I'll give you the floor immediately, Joanna. Please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you very much also the organizers, Andrea and the team, the efficient team who have organized this meeting. I will switch off my camera, but I hope you can see the presentation. Is this the case? Can you see the presentation?
Not yet, but it may take a little bit of time before it loads.
Okay.
It comes now. We have it here. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, with this presentation, I would like to bring forward what are the opportunities to invest in tourism in the upcoming programming period, the upcoming structural funds programming period, 2021-2027. Tourism is expected to be also supported through innovation. So let's see a bit how this will be done. In the current period, 2014-2020, the European Structural and Investment Funds were targeting into 11 thematic objectives in order to achieve thematic concentration and result orientation. Innovation has been mainly addressed through the three first objectives. In the upcoming period, 2021-2027, in order to achieve even higher thematic concentration, the objectives have been further regrouped with a view to offer greater flexibility within the different thematic areas. Therefore, Smart Europe will become the first policy objective to allow ERDF and ESF programs to invest in smart and sustainable research and innovation. Lessons learned from the former programming periods. In the timeline 2014-2020, investments in research have been highly concentrated in smaller number of regions in the EU through a dedicated budget, 66 billion euros. However, cohesion policy is the policy to ensure that no region is left behind in the era of globalization, technological change, the transition to a carbon neutral economy, and last but not least, the pandemic crisis. Therefore, synergies and cooperation are important to achieve cohesion. European territorial cooperation via Indirect and the macro-regional strategies are also expected to play an important role to that direction during 2021-2027. The policy objective 1, the Smarter Europe, is expected to have this fourfold approach. 4 specific objectives have been addressed under this policy objective. As such, a specific market orientation of research activities, digitalization as an innovation enabler, focus on development of skills, and SME support and startups. At this stage now, I would like to pass over to this slide, which is important to show. It's the list of the tourism industry activities as developed by the EU tourism satellite account in order to harmonize tourism statistics across the countries. If we go through the activities, we can see that tourism reflects to a broad ecosystem which can be well supported by investments under PO1, Smarter Europe. Let me give you some examples. Investments in a small-scale infrastructure and accessibility can be supported under PO1, and this could be very relevant for silver and youth tourism. Access to service as well, which is very relevant for innovative tourism business models. Tourism SMEs innovation investments, equipment, software for innovative tourism management, information, communication, studies, peer-to-peer exchange in the field of tourism. Policy Objective 1 will clearly also invest in cultural and creative industries. And last but not least, Policy Objective 1 will also invest in skills and education, which is also very relevant for sustainable tourism. Going deeper through these specific objectives and of the Smarter Europe, we can see that different actions are reflected. And the programs, the upcoming programs, what they are going to do is to measure these actions, the development and the implementation of these actions. They will set, therefore, a list of targets and indicators to be able to measure the development of the projects towards these actions. This target and indicator system can also be combined with common cooperation indicators. Therefore, here we see a lot of opportunities to address common and joint projects via the specific objectives. Let me give you some examples now. Under this specific objective, the specific objective 1, enhancing research and innovation capacities, a program might want to measure how many jobs have been created in supported cross-border tourism SMEs, which remained active 6 to 12 months after their project completion. Under the specific objective 2, another program might want to follow how many joint pilot activities were resulted in digital applications among cross-border or transnational tourism public bodies, for instance, tourism regional development agencies, and how many final users they have reached. Example, a cross-border public museum on handcrafts developing digital applications, and how many visitors this museum reached. Under the third specific objective, another program might wish to evaluate an SMEs incubator for the development of transnational network of SMEs specialized in underwater cultural heritage, for instance. as a tourism product or destinations. And last but not least, under the fourth specific objective, we could see how many cross-border or transnational tourism projects invest in tourism apprenticeships through a macro-regional SMEs innovation cluster. These are some ideas how tourism can be supported through the different specific objectives, of course, when the programs are willing to support tourism under PO1. And this, we hope, that give you some food for thought and inspiration during the dialogue of the macro-regional coordinators with the programs for the upcoming period 21-27. But as said before, tourism is expected to be supported through all the policy objectives. In fact, ERDF acknowledges that tourism and culture are not homogeneous areas of intervention and cover a broader number of projects with different objectives, from energy efficiency for accommodation to skills and training for employees in the tourism sector. Therefore, they could be financed under any policy objective, provided that they contribute to the specific objectives and that they fall within the scope of support from the ERDF. Therefore, under PO2, the policy objective 2, which reflects a greener and low carbon Europe, we could have investments in responsible tourism actions and green tourism SMEs, in energy efficiency, sorry, small-scale infrastructure and cultural tourism. Investments in circular economy could also be supported, or an example, a macro-regional example, the EUSAIR environmental contingency plan for fires and flood. This could also be explored how to be supported in cooperation with the programs and the managing authorities under this specific objective. Now, let me give you some more examples of the other policy objectives. The objective 3 of the upcoming programs is related to more connected Europe. Here also, tourism investment can be very successful. Tourism investments in mobility and accessibility, but also in ICT developments, for instance, working together to develop physical and digital connectivity in CCIs can result to better and cheaper IT solutions. Under PO4, PO4 is very relevant for tourism, and we expect that a lot of programs will opt PO4 to support tourism, skills and education. This policy objective refers to a more social Europe, and it aims to promote access to public services and healthcare facilities, labor mobility and education. There is a proposal now, because you know that we are under negotiation, under trialogues for the formulation of the regulation of the upcoming period. So there is a proposal to introduce a specific objective that this will support specifically tourism under this small social Europe objective. Last but not least, the policy objective 5 refers to Europe closer to citizens. However, this is a more complicated, let's say, a more complex policy objective, because for achieving successful investments under this policy objective, the programs have to identify from the outset the local actors who will implement it. In addition, the programs will be asked to approve a common territorial strategy before starting implementation of this objective. And last but not least, they will have to previously identify the territorial tool which will implement this mechanism. For Indirect programs, this might be more complicated to be developed, this policy objective. Now, let me stress that all the aforementioned policy objectives will be in the framework, will be relevant for the mainstream national and regional programs as well as indirect programs. But for indirect programs particularly, there are two more objectives which are called indirect specific objectives, and these are those figuring out in this slide: a better indirect governance and a safer and more secure Europe. We expect tourism to be addressed under, in particular, the first policy objective, specific objective, for peer-to-peer exchanges and where a stronger participatory governance is needed, relevant, very relevant for the macro-regional strategy tourism actions. And let me finish my presentation with giving you some pictures how important its tourism investments are tourism investments for my unit in the DG REGIO. Tourism, in fact, in Indirect scores among the best and most popular activities. In the past programming period was scoring the most important together with culture. In the current programming period, from the almost 10 billion euros budget of Indirect, tourism scored with 1.3 billion investments, which is something that more than the 10% of the Indirect global budget. Therefore, we expect and we will support very much the tourism investments and also the macro-regional key implementers. We will be there to help them implementing good tourism actions for the upcoming period. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joanna, for this very comprehensive presentation. And I think just to conclude both from the presentations of Ramona and Joanna, we see that tourism is a very multifaceted ecosystem that comprises so many different aspects, and that is also something we need to take into account when we are addressing this issue. And that's what we are now going to look a bit closer at, because now I'm going to invite Mr. George Drakopoulos, the founder and CEO of Tourism Generis, which is the person who has drafted for us and prepared this impact analysis that I talked about initially. We are looking very much forward to your presentation, Mr. Drakopoulos, to hear more about the recommendations and assessments that you have made. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Magnusson. Please confirm that you can see the screen and you can listen to my voice, so I can go ahead.
I see it and I can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you very much for your kind invitation and the opportunity to give me to share with you some thoughts and research outcomes on this very crucial theme about the impact of COVID-19 on tourism and how do we assess the impact and what measures shall we take in order to restart tourism in the macro regions. This assignment has two parts. The part one is to assess the impact, and the part two is to propose some recommendation and measures. Today, I will spend most of the time talking how to assess and what is the initial assessment of the impact, along with some outlines of the second part of research. So the aim of the project is to assess the impact of COVID on the tourism sector at the macro-regional member countries. So I have to, yeah. What is our methodology for that? First, we need to understand the tourism economies in a number of countries with different sizes, different economic development levels, different administrative structures, different competitive index in tourism. So we have to see how tourism contributes to the GDP, to the employment, what type of infrastructure they have. If tourism is a priority sector, what is the capacity of tourism supply, and what is the balance between the international demand and the domestic demand. Initially, this might seem not very difficult. However, there is a big question where all the economists, I think, face now. The question is about the multipliers. Every euro arriving in a country is multiplied by an X factor, and then this is the final contribution of tourism in the local economy, in the local GDP. But in the recent economic history, we never had such a big recession. We have seen recessions up to -10%. So we have seen how multipliers behave. But now it seems that for a certain period of time, the recession was almost to 95, 98%. Will the multiplier would be 95, 97% less? No, because there have been money from the European Union, extra money from national governments, which supported a bit the system. At the end of next year, I think we'll have a clear idea about that. So having this in mind and trying to understand the tourism economies in the member countries of MRS, we constructed a set of macro variables for tourism, classified it in 3 groups. Group A, to see what is the importance of contribution of tourism in the GDP, direct and total, and what is the contribution of tourism in the employment. Then we try to see a bit the demand as a percentage of share between international and domestic demand, and mostly to see the inbound arrivals and outbound departures from the neighboring countries, or in other words, what happened within the macro regions. The third part of the indicator was to see the modes of transport, where we have a very big difference, because in some countries, let's say the Alp region, train and car is very, very common, while in the southern areas, like Greece, well, air transportation is by far more important. So the assignment was very interesting, and for each single country, we have constructed these figures, which might look a bit complicated here, but they're clear. The source for this was Eurostat and UNWTO and World Travel and Tourism Council. In the full edition of the report, you can see the whole data for each single country. I just put some representative figures here. And this gave us the importance of tourism for every single country member of the macro region. If we put all countries together and try to see the share of the GDP, we see a couple of extreme cases, like Montenegro, Croatia, Greece, and Albania. And to the other side, it seems that Poland is the country who has the least dependence on tourism. The same happens with the contribution of tourism to the employment, where the ratios follow the ones of the GDP. And now the big question is, Poland seems to be dependent on tourism less than 5%, while Greece and Croatia are more than 20%. What is going to happen when it comes to the final assessment of the contribution? Will the economies go down because tourism went at lower levels? I don't think so for the moment, because tourism seems to be very strongly interrelated with other industries. I will use an example, well, actually 2 examples from the transportation sector. In Greece, we have 160,000 cars for rental, 30% of them coming from Korea and Japan, and the rest, 130,000, are Europeans. Car rental companies used to renew their fleet by 20% per year, which means that normally, under a normal tourist year, Greek companies would rather go to buy 35,000 cars, 30,000 out of them from Europe. Next year, they will not do so, which means in some industries in Europe, where they produce cars, there will be less demand, therefore less employment. So it is more than clear that we are very interrelated, and we have to find a way to make it clear in order, if you want to help each other. So, is tourism a priority for every country? We see more or less balanced priority within the macro region countries. We have put them all together to have the whole picture, and there are some small differences in terms of the level of tourism service infrastructure. Another very interesting approach is to see the share of domestic guests and the share of international guests. Here there is rather an imbalance, but I will put an asterisk on domestic guests. Going back to the concept of the macro-regions with the cooperation among the countries who are next to each other. When we talk about domestic now, we exclusively think on national borders. This does not help the big idea of Europe. And we have to think again when we say we have to take measures to support domestic tourism. Maybe we need, well, I'm convinced that, not maybe, I'm convinced that we have to expand the notion of domestic and going from domestic national borders to MRS borders, at least, if not European borders. Then again, for every single country, we calculated the inbound arrivals and the outbound departures to see how many of them, what is the percentage of tourists going, let's say, to Germany from the macro region. So Netherlands is not there, Switzerland is in the Alps, US, UK, Austria. So Austria and Switzerland sends a bit of tourists, and Germans, when they travel from the macro regions they belong, they go to Austria and France a bit, and Italy, and the rest is far away from Germany. This is the case almost in all countries members of the macro regions. They are not heavily dependent on the inbound tourism from the neighboring countries. Now, let's go back to our friend COVID-19. If we go to December of last year, when we first had the news about the thing in China, many of us thought that it was a Chinese affair, as it was the case many years ago. And we have done our forecast for a fantastic 2020 touristic year. However, it was the case, that was not the case, as from early January, the problem came to Europe, and in a couple of months, most European countries decided that they need to close borders. So we reached a point by mid of April that according to UNWTO, 100% of worldwide destinations have introduced travel restrictions. We were not allowed to travel anymore. Is that bad? Let's see what happened in the three previous big crises we had in tourism, starting from September 11, where we have seen that in this graph, we compare the net bookings the year before the SARS, the September 11 and the year of September 11. We see that from August to February, bookings recovered. That was not a worldwide cases. It affected mostly US and the traffic with the US. Of course, the traffic with the US is a huge one. But within 5 months, bookings went back to last year's level. If we see what happened with SARS, the difference of the demand in terms of arrivals and receipts in tourism was almost 10%. From plus 9.7, we went to -2, which was not that terrible. And within 3 months, things were back to normality. More or less the same feeling during the global economic crisis, which started by mid-2008. And by the beginning of 2010, in less than 2 years, things were back to normal in an upward trend and moving always to the positive side. If we put all together here, we see SARS 5 months duration, September 11, 6 months, and global economic crisis less. So is going to happen the same with COVID? Of course not. The positive scenario, the favorite out now, is that at least 1.5 years it will cost us a lot, which means that we have to be prepared to fight longer, even though we do not know yet what's going to happen. We simply make the assumption that 2021 will be a tourist year with COVID-19 present. So we have to do our plans, we have to work as we do now with COVID present. If a cure or a vaccine will be available worldwide, that would be nice, and we'll be very happy to have this positive expectation. But so far, our plan is that COVID-19 will be present next year. But it was a very bad look the world presented by mid of April, where UNWTO has done a fantastic work with almost daily updates with the travel restrictions and what happened from country to country. And of course, this has strongly affected transportation. So for Europe, and with 2018 data, air transportation was by far the most important. That was the average for European countries. This is not only the MRS, it's the full of Europe. And of course, in some countries, particularly in the south, it goes up to 70 or to 75%. Air transportation is the least difficult to measure, given the fact that we need to take into consideration the airports, data from airports and the airlines, compared what's going to happen by cars or by rail or by the cruises and the waterways. So let's have a look what happened both in the capacity and the revenue in the airlines. Well, it is unbelievable, but it is true. From the beginning of the year until April 20, that was almost 90% down. Something which we could never bet about that. And if we compare it with the three previous crises, we see the difference. And still, we do not know how long it will take. We have done this exercise for every single country of the MRS region. And once we have seen the revenues, well, somebody may think that it is a very good time to buy some new planes. It's a good idea to invest now because both Boeing and Airbus have a lot of cancellations in their orders, and they can sell the planes which are under production much lower price, which sounds good. And Eurocontrol has produced a fantastic graph on a daily basis and also for every single country. So we see that from April, we almost touched down, no flights at all, only the repatriation flights and emergency flights and some cargo, mostly for cargo and medical equipment. By September 1st, the air transportation was minus 60% compared to September 1st last year. So we cannot expect a lot from that side. We also have done this projection for every single country within the macro regions, and we have presented the report at macro regional level. We see here the Alpine area when we have some, or all of the countries are economic giants or very strong tourist players. We see the decline from the 1st of March, and there is a slight recovery in the second part of June. But this is the recovery in number of flights, but not all the flights had the load factor, the occupancy they had last year. So it is less in terms of passengers, it's even less in terms of tourists. But how many tourists finally did they travel? So according to the WTO, it was almost minus 60% compared to last year. We all understood that it was extremely difficult for statistical authorities to produce these types of statistics. Normally, in the best case scenario, it takes 2 months to give the preliminary figures, and these months are normal months. Nobody was expecting now to have accurate figures. So I believe that what people in UNWTO have done, or in Eurostat, on Reopen EU, they have done a fantastic job under very difficult conditions. So we see here that we are minus almost 60%. Our prediction for the decline of international tourist demand for all macro regions together as an average was 60.5, and the feedback we received was minus 61.7. Not bad, the difference 1.2%. We have produced maps for every macro region, indicating the expected decline in international tourist demand. This is expressed in terms of international tourist arrivals, not overnights, not international tourism receipts. So Danube minus 57, Adrian minus 67, 63, and all this as an average was 60.5. And looking now, trying to relate the decline in international tourist demand with the GDP loss, we have used the World Travel Tourism Council scenarios, which are for the whole of Europe expressed in US dollars. And I don't know which one we have to take. I think that the downside, the red part, is most likely to happen. Again, with the question mark of the value of multiplier. This is something we're going to see later in the year. I mean, in the next year. The same is the scenarios with the employment. Employment is a big issue. How do we calculate the unemployed? I will come back to this later. So this is more or less the picture we have seen. And at the same time, there have been reactions both by national governments. We followed UNWTO classification and the measures which have been taken classified under fiscal and monetary policy, measures and money to save jobs, to provide some market intelligence, and the very crucial effort to create or to enhance the public-private partnerships. EU has presented in a very quick and efficient way a lot of measures which have been analyzed by Ramona and Johanna, so I will not stay here, but I will just take a look of the scenarios produced by UNWTO about the recovery. It seems that, yes, July was the month to start the recovery, but I'm afraid the pace of growth will not be as optimistic it looks in this graph. For a couple of reasons, that even though we do not have a clear second wave of the pandemic, it happens in many countries, and we have a lot of cases. And what is worse is that travel restrictions change almost every week. We have seen people, tourists, leaving their country, going for holidays, and in the middle of the holidays, they receive a note that when you go back after, let's say, 10 days, or 3 days, or 5 days, you have to be 14 days isolated or in quarantine. So this killed the whole business. And some businesses who managed to open, maybe they have to regret it now. What shall we do if we need to restart the economy? The Commission has presented the tourism and transport package. And if I can put in very broad terms, we need to save businesses by providing liquidity and support the jobs, and then using health and travel intelligence, try to reboot tourism. I will make a pause here to talk about support jobs. If we take a look now to what have been reported by all the member countries of the MRS, the average job losses are 28%, which sounds a bit in full asymmetry with what happened in the decline of international demand. The point here is that statistical authorities do not count as unemployed all people without jobs. Because now in all European countries, there are many people without jobs, but they get some kind of financial support, either from national governments or either from money going through EU. And as they have not been fired, they are not classified as unemployed. So if EU or the national government stops subsidizing this kind of employment, the unemployment will go skyrocket by the end of the year. So it's very important for EU national governments to keep subsidizing the employment. And now, as we have learned, we need to make sure that we will provide common health protocols, common standards, common procedures. Otherwise, what is the idea that we are together? Huh? So this is the things now we're trying to do in the second part of the survey, to measure more or less the level of readiness, to see how the crisis has been managed and what was the level of cooperation among the countries of the macro regions. If I can say only one word, because I will keep the results for October, is that there is a lot of space for cooperation in many policy areas regarding tourism. Either how we impose travel restrictions, how we gather and share travel and health intelligence, how we manage the declining demand, and how we count the job losses. I put again the asterisk in job losses because this might create a wrong idea in the eyes of the policymakers. So at the end of the month, we're going to present a set of recommendations and measures. Some of them obviously will be applied European-wide, but there will be some specific from the macro-regional strategies. because we need to capitalize on the basic concept of the macro region, the cooperation. And tourism offers a lot of opportunities for cooperation. We have carried out a survey. We received 30 questionnaires out of the maximum, which I think was 35, 36. And at this point, I have to say special thanks to all macro-regional coordinators, because without their support, it would have been extremely difficult or impossible to collect all these questionnaires. You can see that half of the questionnaires have been collected the last week. We started mid of July, and we managed to get another 15 last week of September, which was bad for our planning, but it was good for the results, because people who responded at the end of this period, week 1 in September, they had more data than the ones who responded in July. So we have a clearer idea what happened in the macro region. So in order to summarize, we're heading towards a new normal about tourism. And I think, and I hope you all share the idea that this normal has to be defined by us. We need, as Europeans, to define our future. And we need to decide to what extent tourism will be among the major driver, or one of the main drivers of the new, allow me to call it, social evolution for this. Thank you very much for your attention. I will be very happy to answer to your questions. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rakopoulos, for this extremely interesting presentation. I think there are many. This raises loads of questions and thoughts. Unfortunately, I see that we are running a little bit behind in the agenda. We were supposed to have a questions and answer session following by a virtual coffee break. I think we have to conclude that we have to skip the virtual coffee break. And that we should start with the second part of this seminar already at 12:30. And that is why I then instead would like to open up for perhaps a few questions and answers now here at this point relating to the presentations of the three first speakers. As you saw, the procedure is that you should announce, you have to put the question in the chat box, and then we will take them as they come. But I would like to open up for a couple of questions after these, I think, extremely interesting presentations that require quite a lot of comments and questions. Please, who would like to be the first one who goes out? Well, in the meantime, while people are thinking about the questions they will want to raise, I can just share with you an experience I have from my own holidays. I was in Sweden during summer holidays, and as you know, Sweden is a country that is quite much affected by the COVID, and the Swedish people were not allowed to travel, so they couldn't pass the borders. They all had to stay at home. And the message that we got in Swedish media was that this is a fantastic period for the Swedish tourism industry, because we have all people at home, and everyone went to the coast. And the reports were that the business simply couldn't even cope with all these people that would normally go abroad. But following the reasoning and of what we are trying to look forward at, I mean, because we want to look at this in a broader context, not in the context of national borders. We shouldn't look at a situation like this, where border restrictions had to be enforced as something, let's say, that is a positive driver. We have to look beyond that. We have to look beyond the borders, and we have to look at least at the level of the macro-regional strategy areas. So I would even say that what the Swedish media were reporting was something that was not very good, which shows that we just support a very, very local type of business, while in reality we want to do something which is much broader. Do we have any questions to any one of our speakers? Or any comments to what I just said?
Yes, Johan, I do have a comment on that, what you talked about, your Swedish holidays. Well, at the moment, I think it's just the common problem we have that every country just thinks that we should stay at home, and we also have the same situation in my region in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, because we were the only federal state who closed the borders for every tourist, and our neighbor federal state Schleswig-Holstein had the problem that everybody went to their beaches, and this is really a big problem we had. But fortunately, it's the past right now because we opened again the borders, but I will talk about that in my short presentation later on, what are the differences in the Baltic Sea states, and just to give you a short insight what regulations we had in the Baltic Sea region and how is it today, and of course what we're gonna do within our strategy, how to recover in tourism. Okay, I'm sorry, it was a very long comment right now.
Thank you, Andrea. No, thank you very much. Do we have any other spontaneous reactions to this from the audience? Please come in and take the floor.
I think it's lunchtime right now. Maybe they have their mouths full of something to eat.
Yeah, then we have to do multitasking and both eat and listen at the same time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what I then would like to do is that I would like to move to the second part of this seminar, where we look at the specific needs and opportunities of the macro-regional areas. And here we have a panel with colleagues representing all 4 macro-regional strategies. And each of you have 10 minutes to make a presentation about your specific needs and opportunities in your area. And what I then would like to do is that I would like to start by giving the floor to you, Andrea, and give you your 10 minutes to talk about the situation in the Baltic Sea strategy. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johan. Okay, I will start my presentation for you. So I was asked to talk about our strategy, the EUSBSR. And first of all, I would like to give you an overview what the situation is right now. First of all, I would like to start with my federal state, Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, how it looks like here, because we are right here in the tourism ministry. And first of all, we had 2 months of the lockdown, which I learned this is not the right definition, because it wasn't a lockdown, but we call it like that. And so we had no tourism at all. So we just closed the borders on March the 18th. And it was really hard, of course, for not only for the tourism sector, but for all people, for me, especially as private person, of course, but also for the economics. And in May, we just started to open step by step our borders, first of all, for only tourists who have a booked overnight stay. At least they need 1 night in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, otherwise they were not allowed to come to our federal state. I have some trouble to watch or to read my presentation because the chat function is very close to that. Maybe I can. Nope. Mikael, do you have
Now
any
look,
idea?
yes, if
Just
you see the control panel you should have a control panel on the right of the screen. There is an icon with two arrows that are meeting each other. If you click on it, you can press it, and then you can see your whole screen and read everything you need.
grazie. Okay, and on September the 4th, we just opened the borders also for daily tourists, so they are allowed to come to our federal state. And before that, that's what I said before, Johan, we had the situation that our neighbor states didn't do that restrictions we had in our, and the result was that every tourist, daily tourist, just went to their beaches, and they really had trouble to take the distance at the beaches, and so the restaurants were really overcrowded. And yeah, so now the member states or the neighbors are quite angry with us because we did it like that. But we still have economic outcomes, let's say it like that. We have a decline of overnight stays of 41.5%, but we heard from Mr. Dracopoulos that this is just not that much, because in other countries we really had a decline of 60 to 100%. In our hotels, we had 46.9% of decline, and we call it a economical disaster. And that's why the federal state of Mecklenburg-Vorpommern, so the government, supports our economy with 254 million euros. As you can see, to our neighbors. So, okay, first of all, I would like to give you a short overview of our cases we have in Mecklenburg-Vorpommern. It's about 1,000 cases so far. So the data is from the 25th of August, and now we have a bit more, but it's still the lowest number in Germany. So we are, in that case, we are quite lucky. In Sweden, as Johan mentioned, Sweden was really hard hit in this corona crisis. They had a decline of 69% in overnight stays, and on 17th of March they really stopped non-essential travel to Sweden, so we were not allowed to go there, as for example. And on March the 29th, the banning of all public gatherings and events with more than 50 people were closed. And in Sweden, there are several crisis packages, like for the cultural sector or for the airlines. And Finland, the decline of overnight stays is even higher, so it's almost 90%. And it's 95% of foreign tourists, so it's quite high. So let's say there were almost nobody from outside, even the business tourists. From 29th May, the travel within Finland was allowed under conditions, and in Finland we have financial support, for example, for Finnair, the big airline they got up to 600 million euros, so it's quite a lot, but I think it's necessary. And of course, there are some tourism marketing and tourism development at the regional level. So it's let's say in the beginning of that process. And when I was preparing this presentation, I thought about my last let's say business travel to Finland. It was in February and in Helsinki, and Hanna-Marie, my colleague there in the ministry, asked me about Corona and the COVID-19, what I think about that, how will it develop? And I said, no, it's just nothing. I don't think that we will have to manage it through months, but yeah, now I am it's not funny at all, I know, but now I know that I really was wrong in that point, in that case. Okay, Poland, I saw that Karol is also online, so he supported us with some information. Hi, Karol. And Poland closed the borders in March, so that there was no travel at all. But they very soon started to open the borders on May the 4th. They have a kind of defrosting, so the hotels and several cultural institutions were opened again, but they have sale decreases in the tourist industry about 60 to 70%. So in some cases it's also 100%. So it's really, let's call it a kind of disaster. But you have several activities in the tourism sector in Poland, Karol. Just to give you an example is Rest in Poland. So just to advertise to stay at home and to have your holidays at home, and to not give up travel, so choose a voucher so that you can go later for your trip. In Lithuania, they also had a national quarantine. They closed their hotels, restaurants, and they had a decrease of incoming tourists about 58%. So there are also some tourism stimulation plans in every country. So I just want to give you some examples on that. In Latvia, it's almost the same situations. They have, of course, a support for the tourism industry. So they reduced the value-added tax. We did that in Germany too. So we don't have 19%. We have 15%, no, 16, I'm sorry, 16% till the end of this year. So they want to support people in their consume to buy and to travel and so on. Yeah, so this is what we have, which situation we have right now on regional or on national level. Of course, in the PA tourism, so my colleague Friederike and me really discussed the last month about our plan, because actually we had the plan to have a workshop serial in every member state. It's a kind of project exchange workshop. So we wanted to have this workshop as a basis for further project ideas and initiatives. But because of COVID-19, we decided to skip the topic, not to skip the serial, just to skip the topic and to find new ways and ideas for cooperation between the member states, so that we have for future some projects which deal with that situation, the crisis, and of course the recovery. So the next very important event for us will be the 12th November. We will have our Baltic Sea Tourism Forum. It's already the 13th BSTF we have. So of course it has the topic reviving tourism in times of global change. So we would like to have let's say a starting point to have a look into the future, because at the moment, we get to know that our member states still have their regional view, of course, because they really need to restructure some things. And of course, tourism will never be the same like it was before the crisis. So we would like to use the chance at this forum to start again, and of course to motivate others to engage in these tourism fields. Yeah. So if you have any questions or you would like to have further information of our PA tourism, just contact me or contact Friederike. You can find every information on our website. And yeah, let's talk about that and look forward. Thank you, Johan.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you very much for this overview of the situation in the Baltic Sea strategy. Now, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Bailestiano from the Ministry of Public Works, Development and Administration in Romania. Do we have you there somewhere? Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, we can hear you.
Perfect. I will try to put my presentation on the screen. Just a second, please.
And we should say that you are representing the Danube region.
The Danube strategy, yes, the Danube region. The priority area number 3, tourism and culture. We have the coordination of this priority area together with our colleagues from Bulgaria and Montenegro. Until the presentation will be on the screen, let me to provide our appreciations for the organizers of this meeting. I think that it's very important to have a common voice and a common vision to start the tourism recovery. So. Thank you very much for the efforts, not just for organization of this meeting, but also for the process started to establish a declaration for tourism recovery. I don't know if you can see the presentation.
We can, yes, we can see the presentation now. It comes up now on the screen.
It's super. So yes, I can say that the situation in the Danube region is not different from other regions. The tourist sector is one of the most affected economic sector. Until now, an important number of jobs in the Danube region, we already lost them, and an important number of jobs there are in a high level of risk. At the same time, we should consider the problems, the pressure for the operators we saw from the presentation and from the report that the incomes are decreasing, and the income it's very low compared with the previous years. But at the same time, the pressure is bigger because for these operators they have a lot of expenditures in order to ensure the safety conditions for the tourists. According with the information received from the member states representative, because I should say that this presentation and our conclusions are built on the elements submitted by the steering group representative. We can say that the regions are differently affected, and in this regard, we need a place-based approach. We need regional and targeted solution. But at the same time, as I said, common efforts are needed in order to overcome this important challenge. We should consider the importance of the moment. Ioan already presented us the picture with the preparation for the next programming period, and it's a strong opportunity for us to address to the current challenges created by the pandemic situation with financial support obtained from the programs with European funds. And I would like to say that it's a great opportunity, not just from the cohesion policy, but we should consider also the common agricultural policy, because we should use this tool to solve the tourism problems in the rural areas. I will not insist because the presentation on this issue was already presented. At the same time, we should consider that since from the beginning of this year, the action plan for the Danube strategy, it was updated. And as a context, it's very important to consider the actions that are already established. Of course, I think the most important challenge is to merge the priorities that are already established in this updated action plan for the Danube strategy, and especially for the priority area number 3, tourism and culture, with these priorities to tackle the current situation with COVID-19. Regarding the priorities, according with the elements that we receive from our colleagues from Danube countries, we can structure them on short term and medium term. On short term, it's very important to have to create the evidence in order to identify very clear the needs that we have in order to start the recovery process. At the same time, I already mentioned on the first slide the pressure that the economic operators have in this period. So there are a lot of measures that are necessary to support them, and not least, it's very important to create the confidence for the tourists in order to restart the tourist activities, to increase the demand. It's very important to make the tourists to know that they will be in safety, and they can restart to travel and to visit different locations. On medium terms, there are priorities that should be developed on medium terms. It's important to adapt to the current trends. We saw from the presentation of Mr. Dracopoulos that the trends in tourism are changed. It's very important to adapt to these new trends and to establish the actions according with them. Not least, it's important to use the digitalization. It's a very important tool, and to support the digital transition it's very important. And not least, maybe one of the most important issue is to increase the resilience of places, and we can discuss about the diversification of the activities, or to improve the people skills, and yes, why not to increase the cooperation in order to exchange information and experience. We consider that in this period it's very important to learn one from another. It's very important to let the information to be available for everybody. And in this regard, I said from the beginning that it's very important to have a common voice and a common approach in this very challenging period. We thank you very much for your attention, and if you need any specific information, we are here ready to contribute. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for sharing with us these thoughts. And you indeed stress very much the need for cooperation and concerted action here, which is also, I think, very much what is the message from Mr. Dracopoulos. Now I would like to give the floor to Blanka Belosevic, who is the head of Department for International Cooperation at the Ministry in Croatia, and she is also thematic steering group coordinator for Pillar 4 Sustainable Tourism in EUSAIR. Please, Blanka, now your 10 minutes. Please, the floor is yours. We cannot hear you.
Okay, do you hear me now?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, I'm starting to share my screen. Okay.
Yes, perfect. We can see it.
No. Okay. Well, I'll try to squeeze it in 10 minutes. So the title I gave to my presentation was actually how to establish cooperation.
Blanka?
Yes.
Blanka, just start the slideshow. You have several buttons. Start.
Just a second. No. That's what I was telling you about, that I don't have the buttons accessible here. Just a second. Okay.
So then go back to your presentation.
Yes, it is my presentation here.
Okay. So, and then you have this animation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you see it now?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay. Go ahead.
Let's go on. So, for those who don't know it, we have this a few pieces of information on when the strategy was adopted, how many countries it covers. Originally, it covered 4 EU and 4 non-EU countries. And as of April this year, we have a new member, North Macedonia. And of course, like in any of the macro-regional strategy, promote economic and social responsibility, increase attractiveness, competitiveness. Well, we try to create synergies and foster coordination among all the regions. And we are a bit different from other strategies. Our technical assistance is actually called strategic project, which caused us a bit of problems when trying to explain what it is, because people thought we have a lot of money to do something crucial, which of course we don't. And the specificity of our strategy is that each country has its project partner that is actually responsible of 80% for handling the needs of the pillar they coordinate, and 20% other national representatives, which actually gives a starting point to establish broader cooperation among the pillars or thematic areas, as they are called in other strategies. So there are 4 pillars, and as Johan said, Croatia, together with Albania, is coordinating the pillar on sustainable tourism that actually comprises culture as well. So what are the specific objectives you can see on the screen? Diversification of tourism products and services, and improving the quality of innovation of tourism offers, ensuring integrated sustainability, and trying to handle the cross-cutting issues. Come on, it doesn't move. What's wrong? I'm having problems, it wouldn't move. Michele, could you help? I don't know, it doesn't move.
Perhaps, have you tried with the arrows in your keyboard? Try to moving them with the arrows.
Well, I am doing it with my keyboard and it worked until now. Now it stopped.
I don't know why, actually.
I don't know.
I really don't know.
It doesn't go further,
really
neither back nor forth. Could Michele, please you do it? Because give control,
yes, perhaps
okay?
I should try.
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's not moving.
Let's see. It says that down, and I have controls.
So now I'm going to talk about cooperation first within the macro-regional strategy, because this is the next slide. This is the starting point. So we developed some cross-pillar, I'm sorry, there should be saying cross-pillar project ideas. It is the old presentation. Why? Because the idea was trying to, as tourism and definitely many other sectors are not, you know, the isolated islands, we should start working among ourselves. I believe that Pillar 4 is the pillar with most proposals for cross-pillar cooperation, with Pillar 3 that is dealing with the quality of environment. Oh, sorry, this is not the, okay, good. Monopillar projects. So trying to go along with what our top 6 priorities taken out of 15 existing are, I believe all these projects, 5 of them that were presented as flagship strategic projects to be developed, to be used for embedding. Actually, when I listen to Joanna, I believe all of them really have a fair chance of being accepted and being implemented, because they do respond to all the priority areas that you mentioned. It is green mapping, so green, ecologically, sustainably, responsibly developed tourism, but also developing IT platforms. Management of tourism destinations using lifelong learning and training programs, promoting cruising tourism in a different way, trying to connect the hinterland, trying to use more other services, not just come there and spend 2 hours. And then when it comes to research, this is an excellent project on culture, where improved statistical monitoring, improved analysis of what actually culture tourism is, having the common benchmarks, common methodology to be able to develop proper strategies, policies, and something that connects us all, development of sustainable and thematic macro-regional routes, because they pass not only through EUSAIR, Mind you, 5 of our member countries are also members of the Danube strategy, and Slovenia is also a member of the Alpine strategy. We share the same geographical space and quite a lot of culture and historical space. What we also did within our pillar, develop a manual that will help us to tell stories about our common intangible heritage. We actually issued a manual on how to include local communities and tourists into this, and some workshops were planned to be organized, but unfortunately this lady with crown called Corona has prohibited us from doing this, but I hope there is a hope for the future. So this is within our pillar, within our priority area. And we also have communication and some cooperation with other initiatives and programs. We participated in INUREC with the private sector and non-governmental sectors. EUSAIR is associated partner in Panoramed. We do communicate all the basic documents and we learn from each other, because obviously Adriatic-Ionian region is part of the Mediterranean. There, of course, is always a possibility to work with Regional Cooperation Center and Blue Med Initiative, and something that we find very attractive for cooperation is the project within Roots for You, where we developed 2 or voted for 2 culture routes. We supported Roots of the Olive Tree to somehow upgrade it to make it more visible, even better, and proposed a new route on Roman heritage. We organized a macro-regional event in Croatia in November 2018 to present this. There is publication on study launched on Roman heritage route, and we can claim with pride that revival of the olive tree route resulted in 26 new members in Greece, 31 in Croatia, and 24 in Slovenia, which we think is a very good and very valid result. But we also cooperate with other pillars. So the first cooperation was proposed in cross-pillar projects. We have approved 4 cross-pillar projects and 1 is pending. It still needs further work on and approval of 3 pillars, the first 4 with 2 pillars. Then we held last year a joint event with TSG3 on evaluation and preservation of environment for tourism in September on the occasion of the World Tourism Day. And we actually included the UNWTO in our work on sustainable tourism even before that. During the 2017, the International Year of Sustainable Tourism for Development, we had whole of our TSG and international and European community join us. What we plan is up to come on the 2nd of October joint event between TSG2 Transport and us. But also it will be a joint event, you will later on see, with other macro-regional strategies. And it is something very in line with our part of the work and the new trends, cycling tourism and cultural routes. So here you have, I won't go into details, 4 cross-pillar projects. You see managing protected areas, modern technologies in buildings of high architectural interest, doing with the green or sustainable energy, developing the centers of macro-regional clusters on blue culture, underwater archaeology with Pillar 1, and then this Adrian cycle tour connecting the transport part of Pillar 2 with sustainable tourism. And the 5th one, which we hope will be approved, is very much in line with what is going on. It is tentatively called For People, for Planet, with pillars 2, 3, and 4. In pillar 2, including both energy and transport subgroups, because we want to talk about Agenda 2030 and the Green Deal, as we think we need some sort of platform and recommendations to help us realize it in our macro region. So I'm bringing here a slide on what we did, or what the European Commission and DG GROW did regarding analyzing multi-level governance and the structure challenges in EUSAIR, but I believe it refers to many of the macro-regional strategies. how to enhance this, how to use the existing coordination mechanisms. So let's say just a few conclusions, what should be done. Clear attribution of responsibilities and expectations between the macro, here it is EUSAIR and EU programming authorities and all participating countries, but I believe it is probably valid for all European macro-regional strategies. Better harmonizing expectations from distinct coordinating groups, which is difficult even at national level, let alone on the macro-regional level. And breaking down silos with the pillar structures. You see, we started doing it, but what about breaking silos with different macro regions? Aren't we supposed to work in the joint, in the common European space? Holding regular national cross-sector EUSAIR meetings with key national and sub-national actors. How about cross-strategies meeting on specific themes? And of course, the last one, which we are trying to implement, is developing stronger ties with peers in other macro-regional strategies. So these are the 4 macro-regional strategies. What do we think we should do to cooperate with? Because this is also definitely a way to overcome or try to recover after this crisis. My first meeting with other strategies, aside from the Danube, because we are part of them as well, is being present at the Baltic Sea Forum last year to present EUSAIR in the 4th pillar and what we are doing. The second event, to which we already invited our EUSAIR and the Danube colleagues, and I sent also the invitations to the Baltic and the Alps strategy, and I hope Andrea and Francois, you received them. This is a workshop on cycling tourism and culture routes that will be held, unfortunately, virtually on the 2nd of October this year. But we invited representatives of the Danube strategy to our unfortunately not held TSG meeting in Greece, and I hope this will continue. We can invite each other to our steering group meetings to see what's going on, how the work is being done. Definitely culture routes that through the Routes for You project, we selected is a good starting point, or rather to say the 23 culture routes that are passing through all 4 of our macro regions are already a good starting point. But anyway, 8 macro regional or culture routes are the starting point for better cooperation in both culture and tourism. So what would be the new ideas? Usually, since EUSAIR is, when you say Adriatic and Ionian, you have 3, so to say, institutions with it. Adriatic Ionian Initiative, Adriatic Ionian Euro region, and Adriatic Ionian macro-regional strategy. Adriatic and Ionian Initiative used to have roundtables. We now have those roundtables back-to-back to our thematic steering group meetings on sustainable culture and tourism. So we might invite you if you are interested in the theme that we are covering. Perhaps if we have a very interesting theme on hopefully physically held EUSAIR forum, we could invite you as guests or even as speakers to share the thoughts on common challenges and opportunities. And the thing that I need to ask, is there a possibility to have joint project proposals? Because we do share the common geographical space. And this is the slide that I had at some of the common EUSAIR meetings. What is our legacy? If there are no more macro-regional strategies, there is some other sort of connection, they decide to change it. What have we left? I believe this could be a point not only of EUSAIR, but all of our macro-regional strategies. We will establish networks. It will be a learning area for all of us if we develop some good learning curricula, if we develop some excellent methodological tools. Why should it be used only by us? We could present recommendations and guidelines. We could recommend processes that could be used by all of us, and we are ready to start it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Blanca. Thank you for all these thoughts and all these ideas. Now we are running a little bit out of time here, so I would immediately like to give the floor to Mr. François Boissac, who is Director for Tourism in region Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. You have 10 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I hope that everybody is hearing me nice. Thank you for the initiative and the very nice and efficient organization. Actually, I'm using my mobile phone since I haven't tried successfully to use my computer. So I hope that Michele can share the presentation on behalf of me, if it is possible.
Yes, I can do that. You just have to give me, please, a couple of seconds in order to, yes, download it and then make it the screen ready for you. Wait a moment.
Thank you.
Oh, anytime. Okay, I hope you can see the presentation and the screen.
Thank you very much. So you will see I have only 3 slides. So I hope it could fix your attention for this 3 slide coming now. And coming back to what has been said so far, I have to say that the touristic season this summer in our region was not so bad because of our domestic active market with 8 million inhabitants. So nevertheless, between March and June, we lost 2.5 billion euro of revenues. And we are very worried about the coming holidays, especially in winter, since we are dependent from the tourists coming abroad. And we have 172 ski resorts in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. Well, anyway, I have 3 slides for this presentation. I'm taking the floor on behalf of the French presidency of EUSAIR, which is held jointly by the French state and also 3 French regions, particularly Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, involved in different Indirect cross-borders and transnational programs. I must also point out that there is a subgroup tourism in the EUSAIR bodies, led by Bernard Lehofer from the Innovation Service for Salzburg, who is project leader in several Interreg projects, particularly dealing with health tourism. So this is precisely the first slide I would like to share in order to show you where we are so far in the EUSAIR tourism strategy. These different bubbles show trends which can be considered as opportunities to build a new touristic proposal based on health resources. The green bubbles, for instance, underline the nature design for which the Alps have a card to play. And more people are living in megacities, and the Alps in the heart of the Europe can offer a place to deal with the different aspiration of citizens. Authenticity, it is also in a green bubble, nature as a place of desire, sharing economy, and so on. And already other ideas have already been shared among us today. And all this leads, and this is the second slide, Michele, all this leads to guiding principle for new touristic products based on health resources in the Alps. Nature is a core pillar which will be connected with a touristic tradition in the territories, and the pandemic crisis had a direct effect on the way how people spend their holidays this summer. This is, I think, an exciting challenge when considering the place of winter ski in the touristic GDP in the Alps. And as far as France is concerned, we would like to push the politician to shift from a model focused on the snow development and dependent upon foreign presence of tourists coming from abroad to an all year round tourism industry. And I have to acknowledge that the pandemic crisis constitutes a good opportunity to speed up the awareness raising, from our elected representatives. And the EUSAIR General Assembly adopted in June 2020, of course, a manifesto in this respect, and this is one of the common action which will be organized inside the Alps bodies. And this is my last slide. I would like to share is research is currently undertaken on the vulnerability of ski resorts and mountains in general, and in the context, of course, of climate change. We follow up indicators for the snow level and their evolution. And in the framework of the French presidency of EUSAIR, we are building a network of French ski resorts involved in the transition at all levels. I mean, economical, ecological, energetical. And we would like to enlarge this approach to the whole alpine space. And this is precisely what the manifesto of the General Assembly of EUSAIR decided. And on the basis of these vulnerability indicators, we are designing several scenarios in order to shift from the only snow option to an all year round tourism industry, as I said. And in this perspective, the health tourism, which we just mentioned, will be a fundamental part of the touristic diversification. So it is clear that the recovery will require new products dealing with the aspiration of people whose health will have a central part. And in this respect, we will organize our touristic summer summit at the end of September here in Lyon. And be sure that one of the core message will be to encourage recovery to the touristic sector through cooperation. That's why the project partners of eAlps dealing with touristic health products will be present at this summit. And the president of the region will deliver a message, an offensive message, as regard to the role of the structural funds in the touristic sector, and especially for hotels and equipments invested in outdoor activities, particularly. So it was my 10 minutes presentation. Perhaps it was not on a macro level situation as far as EUSAIR is concerned, but more in a micro level, since I have not directly involved in the different bodies of the EUSAIR, even if I'm taking part actively, I'm trying actively to take part in the tourism subgroup of EUSAIR strategy.
Thank you very much for this presentation and those insights into the situation in your area. Now we have heard the contributions from all the 4 macro-regional strategies, and we have also heard the input in the first part of this seminar from Ramona, from Joanna, and from Mr. Drakopoulos. We still have 10 minutes, and we have, first of all, we have the opportunity to have some questions and answers, and secondly, we should also try to sum up this seminar. I would like to have at least a few questions before we turn to the conclusions of this workshop. And I would like to say like this. We heard quite a lot of a very interesting aspects that Mr. Drakopoulos pointed out. He mentioned the fact that we have to go away from looking at tourism from this domestic perspective and avoid having these new borders in Europe. And he also showed that the fact that we have these new travel restrictions that changes kind of constantly puts a very, very big pressure on the sector. And he also showed that this recession looks different from the other types of, let's say, kind of crisis that we have had, like the SARS, the global recession, the 11th of September, and all these. And he also showed that when we look at the job losses, the official recorded job losses, they may not show the whole picture because of these various national and European schemes that are put in place. So in reality, the job losses may be much higher than these 30% or 28% that are now being recorded. And these figures are very shaky, basically. The question I would like to pose to all four macro regional strategies is how do you respond to these issues that are being raised by Mr. Dracopoulos? How can we overcome this situation, and how could we make sure that we are not coming into a situation where again we will have a Europe of very many borders that will simply put a restriction on travel, which will make a situation that the tourism sector simply will not be able to rebound? How are we going to solve this? What ideas do you have? Floor is yours from the macro regional strategies, and anyone else who want to come in and ask and develop this issue.
If it's possible, Liviu Boileșanu is speaking from Danube region.
Please.
In our opinion, there are three important steps that can overcome the current problems. We need evidence, we need cooperation, and in this regard of cooperation, we need to have common solutions. I think it's mandatory to work together and to identify concrete measures for specific issues. I think at the same time it is necessary to have two approaches. One, as we saw in the report, it can be as a general perspective that should be addressed to every country, every member state. And the second, to identify specific problems, to identify the most affected cities, areas, and to come with concrete solution for these areas. Thank you very much.
Can I?
Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I do agree we need regional and targeted analysis and proposal of solutions. But you know what, I remember the first time that we met with George, the first instance when he was presenting the first results. I remember saying something like, okay, we had SARS, we had 9/11, we had SARS, we had economic crisis, now we have Corona crisis. Shouldn't we be thinking about how to manage crises in general and be ready for a number of different scenarios? Because you ask Johan, how are we going to avoid situation like this? Probably we won't be avoiding or won't be able to avoid crises. We don't know what the next crisis will be. Will it be biological? Will it be volcanoes, earthquakes? Because you know, the earth in Zagreb and around Zagreb is still shaking. So we don't know, perhaps there is a big earthquake coming again. So instead of thinking of a particular one crisis, I should say we should put our heads together and develop a few scenarios for different types of crises and how should they be managed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments or ideas in this regard? So we have to be simply, we will never live in a world without crisis. Crisis will always come. The question is how we prepare for them. and we have to prepare for crisis.
May I add a couple of words if there are no other questions?
Please, the floor is yours.
And thank you. I will mostly make the following statement as food for thought. And by October, I will present my full approach of that. During the last 5 or 6 months, in many countries, well, in all countries, many people expressed their strong doubt about the importance of tourism as an economic activity with obvious social impacts. And they say it's not a good idea to put tourism as a priority in our development because tourism is very sensitive, very vulnerable, and see what happens this year, and blah, 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 blah. And they found some open ears on that. So at least the ones who work for tourism, and I am one of them, I only work for tourism as long as my life, I say we need to protect tourism. I am against of what is called solo development, only tourism. No, it's not viable. We don't need it. We need a fair share. But on the other side, it's not a good idea. It's totally unfair to judge, to give an opinion, a view for a whole sector just from the performance of a single year. It's like playing football for 90 minutes. In minute 15, you lose 1-0, but at the end of the game, after 90 minutes, you win with 3-1. So I would suggest to all these people doubting about the importance of tourism, make a little table. I will present that by October, putting the added value of tourism in the respective economies of the countries, along with the added value of other industries. But for 10 years, putting 0, which is not 0, but let's put 0 in 2020. And then prepare another table for the next 10 years, starting tourism with 0. I'm sure that in the whole period of 10 years, tourism, if not the first, is among the top contributors in economies, and the same will happen. So it's simply a bad year. Such a huge sector on tourism is not investing only for 1 year, is not expecting results only for 1 year. Yes, we have to make it more resilient, we have to be prepared, and I fully agree with Blanca that we need to be prepared for many different types of crises. Crisis is a must in our job description for many reasons. Crisis of different magnitudes, with different frequencies, but it comes every year in different phases. And I would be very happy to work with you. If you have any ideas, we can discuss it now or later. It is a must, and I think the concept of macro regions offers the right framework to promote it within Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any direct reactions to these comments? If not, because this is obviously work in progress and something that we will follow up. And as I said initially, we are going to talk more about this at the next step, the next phase of this initiative that will come during the European Week of Regions and Cities. But this means that I will now give the floor to Mr. Jean-Pierre Alquin, who is head of unit at Unit D1 in DG REGIO, who will make the concluding remarks. Please, Jean-Pierre, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Johan. Hello, everybody. I'm quite impressed by the attendance to this workshop. I counted more than 60% at some stage, which is quite a success. And I also could take part or listen to the last hour of presentation mostly. And it is now time for me to recap and give the final remark. First of all, going back a bit in the time, for the last few years, whenever we had discussion about the future of macro strategies, the need to support tourism and the need to promote a new form of tourism, which we call sustainable tourism, to be developed next to the existing one, has always been on the agenda. We've been promoting a form of tourism which is going 12 months a year, which has a small environmental footprint, which is often closely connected also to cultural heritage or new type of activities, maybe more outdoor also. And this was not only an opportunity, but it was also a need. We heard the presentation about tourism in the Alps. We know that there is a need to review the form of tourism because we are concerned that with the impact of climate change, the current model will soon become unsustainable. As we were preparing for the new financial perspective, if you remember in 2018, the Commission issued a draft regulation and a draft budget. The COVID-19 came and gave us a harder hit than anyone expected. And EU institutions and member states have been reacting extremely quickly. In the spring, in April, we drafted the Key and Key Plus regulation that have also been translated into all ETC instruments now. And during the summer break, the Commission also proposed an unprecedented budget with 750 billion additional resources that the Council adopted or approved in July under the German presidency. And since then, we are working to make sure that we can cope with the COVID-19 crisis. In this context, everyone knows that the sector of tourism has been suffering more than most of the usual sector of economic activity, and that something has to be done. And we expect tourism to feature prominently in the possibilities for funding. You know that in the Council, they are discussing also about how to make sure that tourism is featuring notably under the policy objective number 4, with, I understand, quite a broad description of tourism in order to allow for the support of this sector to take place in the cohesion policy. What we've been doing also as part of the macro-regional strategies is to make sure that what we have as idea for and the need for cooperation is speedily transmitted to all managing authorities, in particular the one implementing the cohesion policy, in order to promote what we call the embedding. And this was one of the key topics we discussed during this year, the event we call the Week of Macro-Regional Strategies, which was attended by more than 600 persons totally. And we need to continue this work, and this is also the purpose of this session. And what I heard, and I believe there is a consensus on that, is now what we need to be able to provide is to provide evidences on what are the needs to be of the tourism sector, but also what are the opportunities which are created by this situation, notably with new financial means, but also we heard about a new form of local tourism, and we know that those tourists are coming with other expectations than the international tourists. So the session we have today is certainly extremely important in order to establish and identifying concretely the needs and opportunities. And this is paving the way of the next event that we are going to have in exactly 1 month's time. On the 14th of October, we are going to have another event about tourism during the week of regions and cities, and there we expect to have what is called a declaration, which is going to be to put in paper the needs and opportunities of the sector of tourism. And this is something which is extremely important, as it will allow all of us to engage with all the actors and stakeholders who are involved in the implementation of the cohesion policy, in order to make sure that this work is feeding their reflection on how to gear, how to orient the tourism of the year 2021-2027. And you know that those funding will last way beyond 2027. So the session today is extremely important, and we are all looking forward to meet again in a month's time. this is basically the key message I wanted to give. And this event today, as important as it is, I would like to come now to also highlight the key person who have been allowing this event to take place. I would like to start by highlighting the role provided by the Slovenian presidency, and in particular by Andrea Jirina, who has opened this session, and who is also extremely active in all macroeconomic strategies. As you know, Slovenia is part to 3 strategies, but also Andrea has always been extremely voiceful whenever time is coming to contribute to all debates. I would like also to thank and congratulate all the coordinators and members of all the different groups, pillars, steering committees who are looking at tourism in the macroeconomic strategies. As without them, we will not be able to move forward. They've been contributing today, and we really count on them for the future. When I came in, I also heard the remarks provided by Mr. Drakopoulos, who is an expert we've been hiring, and I also would like to thank you very much for your contribution and assistance. We need expertise in order to have contributions which are to the point and meeting the needs of the actors. This leads me also to come now to the Commission. As you know, in the Commission, one DG is in charge of tourism, and it is DG GROW. They've been helping us to prepare today's intervention, and they are chef de file, so thank you for them. And last but not least, I also would like to thank and congratulate all my colleagues. They are extremely numerous today at this event. But in particular, we have a small team around Joanna Moliu, together with Johan and also David Maciek. They are working very hard on this aspect of tourism, and I would like to thank them. And now I come back to something I already said. It will be very important that we are all there in a month's time in order to make sure that we have a declaration which is up to the quality we want, up to the level of ambition we want, so that we can promote it and then forward it to all the stakeholders who are implementing the cohesion policy. That's really the challenge, is to make sure that what we think today is going to give to be implemented tomorrow. So I thank you all for your very active participation. I thank again the organizer, and I'm looking forward to see you in 1 month's time. Bye.
Thank you very much, Jean-Pierre. I was just asked by the organizers whether everyone could put on their camera for a joint photo. I'm not sure that the system will hold for that, but we can make it try.
It seems it works, so we can also use the microphones, turn on the microphones, and applause to the speakers.
So then we do that. Thank you very much, all of you who have participated at this event. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you.
Mr. Johan?
Yes.
I have a question. I'm Ingrid Zimmermann from Austrian Tourism Ministry. The declaration which is going to be drafted, will it be circulated to us before it will be published?
I mean, the declaration is something that we are going to discuss at the next, let's say, phase of this event. With other words, at the next workshop. So the idea is that there should be possibilities for input here, but I will give the floor to Joanna directly if she would like to further develop on this question. Please, Joanna.
Thank you, Johan. So in fact, the idea is to be a declaration tailor-made for the macro-regional strategies. Further to what we have discussed today, and with the help of Mr. Drakopoulos, we will have some conclusions that we could use them to facilitate the embedding process, the dialogue with the programs. So the macro-regional coordinators and members will be taken on board, of course, because that will be something generated by you, for you, and the Commission is here to facilitate this action. So you will be contacted soon in order to start a methodology towards the declaration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you to all. I will have to leave you now for another meeting. Thank you very much.